Writing is rewriting. That phrase gets thrown around a lot, and there's a good reason for it. Today we're going to dig into how to tackle those next few drafts.
Tackle, 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 tack, tack, tack.
I'm Nathan Graham Davis. I'm a Hollywood screenwriter living in Massachusetts, and this is class 14 of Delusional. If this is the first video you've seen from this series, then congratulations, you have stumbled upon a one-of-a-kind 15-week screenwriting course. And you don't have to pay me a thing for it. If you want to know more, go check out Class 0 where you can find out if this is for you. For those of you following along, this is the second to last class of this journey. You've read a ton, you've studied a ton, and by now you've written most of a feature screenplay. That's a huge deal, so stay focused and stay the course. You are almost there. And by the way, if you're an overachiever who's already finished that first draft, there is a rule: you must celebrate. Buy yourself a little something to commemorate it, go see a movie, have a party, go out for ice cream, something. I have a bottle of really nice scotch that I call my celebration scotch, and I only ever tap into it when I have something to celebrate with my writing. And that absolutely includes finishing a first draft. But when that first draft is done and that dust has settled, there's still a lot more work to do. So let's talk about that. As I've said in previous classes, our best ideas are rarely the first ideas we have. Thomas Edison was said to have tested out 1,000 versions of the light bulb. In response to a reporter asking how it felt to have failed 1,000 times, he said that he didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was simply an invention with 1,000 steps. Well, our screenplays are a lot like that. Getting to the good stuff requires iteration. That begins with our first ideas as soon as we have the concept and try to break the story. We change and build on those ideas as we outline, and then we change and build on them again as we move on to our first drafts. Often we change and build on them even more as we're writing those first drafts, going back and tweaking and fiddling with things along the way. And none of this even includes the hundreds of ideas that we outright discarded, that never even made it onto paper. Our first drafts are a hell of a lot closer to the good stuff than when we started, but they're not there yet. They're probably not even close. To get there, we're going to rewrite, and we're going to need to do it more than once. This is so important that I believe that a writer's chances of success are closely tied to how open they are to doing multiple major rewrites. So what do I even mean when I say the word rewrite? Well, there are a few levels of rewrites. There are polishes. These mostly just involve tweaks, a cut here, a scene change there, improving the dialogue over there, maybe some additional emphasis on theme or character arcs, but not much more. This is what we do when the script is truly nearly finished, and it rarely takes more than a few days. But it's not uncommon for newer writers to only do this kind of rewrite where they just go through and make little tweaks without looking at the script holistically. So I just want to warn you about that up front, because although it's a hell of a lot more work, nearly every first draft needs something far more significant. Your typical standard rewrite will certainly involve all the same things as a polish, but it goes deeper than that. There's a big range here, but when we're doing a true rewrite, we're talking about doing it with an awareness of entire scenes or sequences that don't actually work yet. Characters may need to be cut out or combined with others. New characters may need to be added. We might need an entirely new ending or opening or both. We're reinventing large parts of the script here, and it's a lot of work. It means untangling all these ideas that are now somewhat cemented in our heads to make space for the new ones. It's also scary because it means completely discarding and letting go of things that we labored over. But it's not the scariest form of rewrite. That title goes to the page 1 rewrite, the mother of all revisions. When there is enough about a script that isn't working, it's often a better idea to just start over with a brand new document. A few fragments might remain, but in general, we're talking about an entirely new script here. So when is a page 1 rewrite necessary? Maybe the tone or the theme is all wrong. If that's the case, these things inform so many decisions in the script that if we don't start with a new document, it's almost impossible to be authentic to the changes that need to be made. Sometimes the characters just aren't working at all. Sometimes the take on the genre feels wrong. Sometimes the plot is backward or is just in need of enough massive changes that, for the sake of consistency, a new document is the smarter move. It can be super intimidating to start over from scratch, but I will say this. I do one for nearly every script I write. I think out of my last 7 or 8, I only had one that didn't require a page 1 rewrite. And every time I've done this, within like 1 or 2 pages of beginning that new document, I have felt a certain amount of relief. That blank page is freedom. Freedom to go after the changes that will make your script the best it can possibly be. Yes, they're brutal, but they're often what's needed, so I want you to open your mind to that idea. Page 1 rewrites are something that most professional writers are very familiar with. And for me, the first draft is often just figuring out what the movie wants to be. Starting over with a new document allows me to deliver on that. So a typical rewrite process for me might be a page 1 rewrite, 1 or 2 more standard rewrites, and then 1 or more polishes before I feel it's ready. And that doesn't mean that I'm done, by the way. Whenever I wind up attaching someone to a project, they're going to have notes, often good ones, and those result in 2 or 3 more rewrites. I did something like 11 drafts on Aftermath over the years. It may have actually been more than that, and 3 of those were for Voltage Pictures, the production company that made the movie. They had notes related to budget and their own tastes, and then they wanted to cast Dylan Sprouse, who was great, but that meant making some changes to the protagonist. By the time they decided to greenlight it, I'd rewritten well over 60% of the script that they'd first optioned. You may hate the idea of changing your work to fit other people's ideas, and I get that. It's part of why I still write short stories and am picking away at a novel because I have complete control over those things. But making movies and doing it for a living is a truly amazing thing, and the trade-off for that is understanding that it's a very collaborative medium and that we're not in charge of the end result. Our job is to write the version that will get a star and a director to attach and that will get someone to cut a check to actually make the movie. That's not easy, and if you're not able to do those rewrites, the movie either won't get made or they'll hire someone else to replace you. So I did the rewrites, and they weren't easy, but I had a lot of fun doing my best to execute those notes, and the director came on board and did his own passes to suit both his vision and the budget that he had to work with, and the thing got made. And it is a pretty different movie from what I had first envisioned. But even though the dialogue is mostly not mine, and the tone in many scenes and some of the plot are quite different, the heart of it and much of its structure still feel a lot like what I wrote. And I got to see it blow up on Netflix and hit #1 in the country. Yeah, you can go on Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes and see some pretty dismal reviews, but something that was pretty eye-opening for me, because we hit #3 in the world that first week, Netflix released the numbers and it was seen by 9.9 million people in that first week alone. And whenever I searched social media to see what people were saying, the majority of what I saw was super positive. It was clear to me at that point that the movie had found an audience that loved it, even if it was pretty different from what I had tried to write. And I had the honor of being the originator of something that a lot of people enjoyed, and that gave well over 100 people jobs. And I got to watch it come together on set, and I got to experience my kids being excited that their dad was #1 on Netflix, and I have an actual career right now. Had I not done the rewrites, most likely none of this would have happened. So all of this is to say, you need to learn to rewrite if you want to be a professional screenwriter, and you need to learn to do it in a way that goes far beyond just minor little tweaks. You don't need to worry about writing to other people's tastes right now, but you do need to focus on getting to the best possible version of your own vision, which is still a lot of work. If any of this feels daunting, that's totally okay. After all, you've done a lot just to get to this first draft. So that's why my first tip is to rest. Seriously, take a break after you finish that first draft. Celebrate your accomplishment and get a little distance from your story. Recharging your batteries is critical. Burnout happens to way too many writers, and I really think it's just due to the fact that, we don't really respect the need we have to rest. Also, that distance will help you look at your script with a somewhat fresher, more objective perspective. You'll see flaws you couldn't see before, you'll be more sure of the ones that you suspected, and you'll have ideas for how to make the script stronger. How long should that rest be? Well, immediately after the first draft is finished, you'll likely already have a few ideas for things that you want to fix. I don't think you need to wait too long to tackle those. So take a few days off and then go tackle those fixes and then give yourself an actual break. More time is often more effective here. I just reread a script of mine that I hadn't looked at in over a year because my manager wants to do something with it, and I was shocked by how many things I wanted to improve. And this was something that I had already considered ready and that has had multiple attachments in the past. It's a professional script. But I'm probably a slightly better writer than I was a year ago. I mean, I hope I am. I hate the idea of ever getting to a point where I stop getting better. But mostly, I just had the luxury of time away from it, which means that I could see things that I didn't see before. But if you take a year off between every draft, you're never going to finish anything, and so that's not a good idea either. I'd recommend one of two things. One, you can start a second script and avoid looking at the first one until after you've finished the first draft on the new one. That'll give you at least a couple months, which is a great amount of time, and then you'll have the benefit of having two scripts that you can juggle between as you get feedback and do revisions. That can be an excellent approach. It's kind of what I'm doing right now, actually. It's okay if you don't feel like you have the energy for that, though. True rest is important, and if you spend just 2 or 3 weeks watching movies and hanging out with friends and family and maybe checking out some other forms of art to keep you creatively excited and fulfilled, you're going to have a mostly fresh frame of mind to tackle that next rewrite with. And although I haven't in a while, when I'm working on a single project, 3 to 4 weeks is about the amount of time I take. When I had a day job, the schedule and time frame for rewrites often looked something like this. First, I'd go through that first draft and make any changes I knew I needed to make. I'd fix any typos, things like that, and then I'd send out that punched up first draft for notes, and it would typically take about 2 to 3 weeks to get those notes back. Those notes would get me thinking, I would have ideas for things that I could fix, and then I would tackle that first true rewrite. Like I was saying, this was usually a page 1 rewrite, and a typical timeline for that would be something like 4 to 5 weeks. So let's say that we're up to 8 weeks total. I would send that out for notes again, wait a couple more weeks, get that feedback, and then find that I still had some issues that needed sorting out, and so I would do the next rewrite. That might take me 2 weeks, so now we're up to maybe 12 weeks. Then I'd send that out for notes again, wait yet another 2 or 3 weeks, get that feedback, and hopefully find that I mostly just needed a polish. So I'd do that, it'd take me about a week, and then I'd maybe have a script that was ready for submission. So that is roughly a 3 to 4 month rewrite process. And if the script needs even more work, which they sometimes do, it might take 4 months or more. So once you include the first draft, we could be talking anywhere from 5 to 10 months to get to something that's ready. And that's why I say that if you're writing 1 or 2 polished scripts a year, you're doing really well if you can keep that pace up over a long period of time. I encounter many aspiring writers who write many more than that, but who aren't doing the necessary revisions. And here's the thing. No one cares how many scripts you're writing if they're not written to a really high standard. 1 exceptional script can launch a career. 1,000 mediocre scripts won't get you anywhere. I will add one caveat to that. Don't spend more than like a year to a year and a half on one project, at least not right now. New projects do exercise those writing muscles in new and different ways, so if you stay on the same one for too long, you're also doing yourself a disservice. If after several drafts or that year to year and a half, your script still isn't up to a professional standard, that's okay. Put it aside, you're just starting out here and you will continue to learn and grow over time. And if the concept's a winner, you can come back to it again when you've leveled up those skills. I've mentioned notes a fair bit in this class already. They're a critical part to improving your work, and learning how to interpret and use them is a critical part to doing this professionally. So let's talk about that. First things first, if I'm going to ask somebody to give me notes, I want to send them the best possible version I can. There are 2 reasons for this. First of all, anything someone reads from me influences their impression of me as a writer. Even though they know it's a work in progress, it doesn't matter. They won't be able to help themselves. This draft will affect that opinion. The other reason is that I know what a big favor I'm asking when I ask someone to read me, and I want to respect their time. So once I think I've finished my rough draft, here's what I do. I open up a new Google Doc. This is my script's rewrite document. I make a bold heading that says rough draft, and then I start reading the script in PDF form so that I can't fiddle with it, because I definitely will if I'm reading it in the screenwriting software. If I notice there's an issue or a typo, I add it to the bullet-pointed list of notes beneath the heading. Next, once I've done this, I print up that draft and I read it again. This time I use a pen to mark it up. I write notes in the margins, larger notes on the cover page. I cross out lines of dialogue or other things that don't work, and I circle typos. Typically, I use a bright orange pen for this so that it sticks out. And then after I'm done, I go through that draft and I add all of those items to my bullet pointed list. At the end of this, I've probably got a few dozen things I know I need to fix. Because I'm so close to it, most of these are going to be pretty simple, which is why I need outside opinions. But regardless, I execute whatever I find, and once I have, I consider this my true first draft and I send it on its way. With subsequent drafts, after I've executed the notes that I've received from others, I go through a similar process. I print the script out, take notes, look for typos, and make the tweaks I know I need to make. And once I've done those, it's ready to send for more feedback. So who do you send your script to? Well, first of all, you have your writing group. If you've been doing this together for 14 weeks, hopefully you've developed some level of trust and respect. And if they're doing the work just like you are, that means they're also dedicated, and that makes them a great place to start. Depending on how big your group is and how many of you there are, you could potentially all give each other notes on everyone's scripts. You could also limit it to just a couple scripts each, but either way, this is one of the major benefits of a group like this one, so take advantage and trade scripts with each other. I typically send each draft out to 3 or 4 readers. I prefer to get notes from people who haven't read prior drafts. So if you're doing the math, that means I'm probably looking for like 10 or 12 readers on a single script, maybe more. And that's a lot, especially if you're writing a couple scripts a year. And that's part of why it's important to read a lot of scripts from others so that you've got people who are ready to do the same for you. You're probably not connected with that many writers just yet. Don't worry about that. There's nothing wrong with reading more than one draft from each other at this stage, but I would recommend trying to expand that network. The screenwriting sub on Reddit has a weekly script swap, and that tends to be pretty active. There are lots of other places online where you can do that kind of thing as well. And if you do trade scripts with someone whose writing or feedback you appreciate, stay connected. It's as easy as that. Also, although writers are often the best resource for improving your work, if you happen to know other people in film and they've offered to read you, take them up on it. I'd recommend sending them later drafts to read though, like when they're a little more polished. Once again, you want them to have a good impression of your writing. Often when we're starting out, we're tempted to send our scripts to friends and family, and that's fine. Just be warned that they are almost never going to give you feedback that's truly honest. They love you and they're going to see your writing through rose-colored glasses, focusing on things they enjoy and skipping right over things that would give them pause if they were watching the actual movie. So take that almost certainly positive feedback with a large grain of salt. Okay, so you got people to read your work, you got notes back, what's next? First off, prepare yourself. You have poured your heart into this work for many months, you did your very best with it, and it can be very difficult to separate it from who you are as a person. That means when, inevitably, people zero in on things that aren't working, it's gonna hurt. Do everything you can to avoid being defensive. That's a quick way to lose a reader for life. They may have caused you a lot of pain, and they may not even have been that empathetic about it, but you're gonna thank them for it, and you're gonna be genuine, because again, they've done you a really big favor. Also, remember that this script is not you. It's something that you've made. It's one of an ocean of things that you will likely make over the course of your life. And it is something that can change, and it can probably change for the better. And once you have changed it for the better, you'll be so glad you did. Just like how finishing a script is an amazing feeling, having written something that's genuinely kind of good feels pretty unbelievable. But to get to that point, you do need to actually do something with all these notes. So here's what I like to do if I'm writing on spec, which is exactly what you're doing right now. When I get notes in, I open up my rewrite document and I make a new heading for whatever the current draft is, and I make a subheading with that reader's name. I read through their notes and then I summarize them in bullet pointed lists below that name. Once I've gotten all those notes back and added them to that document, I go through the script again and reread it. I keep their notes in mind and also look for new revelations of my own. I jot those down under a heading that says My Notes. Once all those notes are documented, I compile them. I like to break them down into major, medium, and minor notes, and I list those in rough chronological order. I put the initials of the person who gave me the note after each one, which lets me keep track of whether or not more than one person had the same thought. Major notes are things that will require days or hours to execute. Medium can typically be done in less than an hour. Minor notes can be done in like 5 to 10 minutes or less. As I go through them, I look at each one as objectively as I possibly can. If I disagree with a note and only one person had it, I will still think on it, but if I can't figure out a way to execute it that fits with my vision for the story, and if I can't find a good reason to keep working at it, I delete the note and I move on. One person having a note does not mean that it's wrong. It might be brilliant, but if I don't agree with it and no one else has called it out, there's a decent chance that it's just a taste thing and I go ahead and I ignore it. If I disagree with a note but 2 or more people had it, I think about it much more carefully. Often, I find myself coming around to these at least on some level because there's usually a reason that 2 people had the same thought. Even if I can't figure that out just yet, I don't delete those notes. I might add an asterisk or something if I'm unsure about it, but I will leave it on the list before moving on. It can be hard to know which notes to pay attention to and which to ignore though. And that's especially true if you're new. And to be honest, it's part of the art of it all. Your instinct is critical here, so pay attention to that feeling in your gut. When all else fails, that's a pretty great guide. When my notes are finally organized, I turn the bullet points into checkboxes and I'm ready to start. Usually I just begin by thinking through the notes and jotting down ideas in a notebook or a scratch document. When I understand the vision for this next draft, I just get writing. Most days I'll sit down to write and knock out 1 or 2 of the minor notes first. These are often things like typos and really quick dialogue fixes. But knocking out a couple makes it feel like I'm making progress. And then I'll just check that box or 2, and then I'll move on to a medium or a major note, which will take up most of that session. Something else that can be really helpful is if you can put together a meetup or a Zoom with the people who've read your latest draft. An hour of conversation about their notes can really help you zero in on what they were thinking and why, and you'll often find yourself coming up with fixes right there in that session. They will also get a better idea of your intent and may have additional ideas that are helpful. These can be tricky to organize in a timely fashion, and they're also one more thing that you're asking of people, so I'm not recommending them as something that you must do, but if you have those relationships or people seem open to it, give it a try. And obviously, offer to do the same for them. When your script has gone through a couple full rewrites and you know it's getting closer, I definitely recommend a table read. This can be around an actual table or it can be on a Zoom. The first few times I ever did one, it was around a backroom table at a bar. All that matters is that you get some smart people together to read your script and let you hear it out loud. This is a great time to bring in actors or filmmakers if you know any. Especially with actors, there are a lot of aspiring people who will see this as an opportunity to practice their own skill set, and they'll be all about being part of it. Do have a writer read the action lines though, because that job is tedious and it's best to have someone do it for you for whom you can return that favor. For the rest of the people who are present, assign them the various roles ahead of time and make sure they know what those are. You can definitely send them the script ahead of time too if you'd like to. You don't have to. Many actors will appreciate it though. Just make it clear that you don't expect them to read it ahead of time. They're already doing you a big favor. Your goal with this table read is just to get a sense of the script's flow and how it plays out emotionally and how the dialogue sounds. Don't direct people how to read your lines. You want to know if your intent is clear on the page. If a line comes across as awkward, that's something worth noting. When the read is over, invite any and all feedback. You might be surprised what people have to offer. And once again, people have done you a great favor here, so avoid being defensive, be gracious, offer to return that favor however you can, and buy a round of drinks if you're out, or provide food or drink if you're doing it in your home. Okay, so that's getting feedback, but if you're working with a group here, then you'll also be giving feedback, so let's talk about that for a second. I've talked about it a bit already, but it's a really important skill to develop. It's part of how you build lasting connections, and it also helps you improve your own craft because you're literally studying and thinking about story as you do this. You may feel like you don't have much to offer right now, and that's okay. We all have to start somewhere though, and after taking this course, I would say that you have something to offer. You have done a lot of work, so first things first, remember the goal. Your goal is not to help them write something the way that you would write it. It's to help them write their movie to the best of their ability. It's really important to keep this in mind as you go. That doesn't mean that you can't give notes that are rooted in your own preferences. You should just call that out if you do. The most useful notes are typically the biggest and broadest ones. If a writer has to rewrite 20 straight pages to make something work, any tiny notes within those pages are going to be negligible anyway. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't touch on those things, but they shouldn't be your focus. The things you really want to look for when giving notes are things like, does the script deliver emotionally? Does it deliver on its premise? Is the protagonist active? Did the opening pages and the first 10 pages hook you? Does the ending work? Is the tone consistent? Did it feel surprising or unique? Was the protagonist's goal clear and was it enough to drive the movie? Do the characters feel three-dimensional and authentic? That is not an exhaustive list, but if those things are working, then the script is doing something right. And if they're not working, the writer needs to know. Do try and frame things in a way that's supportive and encouraging. Again, getting notes always stings, so do be honest and clear, but also aim to be empathetic and helpful. When I read, my personal process is pretty simple. I take notes as I go, listing the page number for each thought, and then writing the note next to it in a document or an email. Larger, broader notes I'll jot down at the top, and when I finish, I organize the top of that email into several paragraphs about those broad notes, my overall impressions, calling out both the good and the not yet good, and any other trends that I noticed. After that, I clean up all the page notes that I took as I read, making sure that they're clear and that I still agree with them after I've finished reading. Finally, I wrap it up with some concluding thoughts, remind them to stick to their vision and simply use the notes that work for them, and then I always thank them for letting me read it. Because honestly, although it is a lot of work, it's also something of an honor to be entrusted with someone's script, especially an early draft. That's my process. I have friends who mark up the PDF itself with notes and then jot down some final thoughts on the last page. That can be really helpful, and there are plenty of other effective methods too. At the end of the day, the goal is to be clear, helpful, and encouraging, and if you can do that, you're doing a great job. That's it for Class 14. If you've stuck with this course for this long and done the work along with it, you've done something pretty admirable. Most of your competition does not have that level of drive or discipline, which means that already you're setting yourself apart. Remember, this course is not actually free. You are paying yourself, you're investing in yourself. Keep doing the work, you're almost there. You also need to pay this course forward. If you're getting something out of it, please share it with others. And please like the video to help please the algorithm gods. For this week, your assignments are as follows. First, write 10 to 15 pages or whatever it'll take to get you to that first draft by the end of the course. Second, read a script from an amateur writer who is not in your group and give them feedback. Go to the screenwriting subreddit's weekly script swap or their weekend read thread, or find a writer in another social media group, whatever works, but find an amateur script from someone new and give them that feedback. And that's it. I'll see you next week for the final class. Happy writing.